Jax's revenge domain. He told the board I was just a floor manager. I'd been buying shares for 23 years and owned more of the company than his mother did. He had no idea. The conference room smelled like fresh paint and old coffee. Iron Forge Industries had dropped $35,000 renovating this place 4 months ago. New carpet, leather chairs, glass panels. The 18FT oak table stayed put, though. You don't replace solid oak. Preston Wade Blackfield stood at the head of it, pointing at his laptop screen showing some slide about operational efficiency optimization phase 1. Kid was 28, fresh Wharton MBA, and hadn't closed that MacBook once during his whole presentation. His eyes kept dropping to read his own notes like he was giving a book report. 8 people sat around that table. Most looked uncomfortable. One guy kept clicking his pen. Behind Preston, some young woman named Angela Torres held a tablet like it was a shield, staring at the carpet like she wished she was anywhere else. I sat at the far end, hands folded, hydraulic pressure steady. "Garrett," Preston said, not looking up from his screen. "Effective immediately. We're restructuring your position. You're transitioning from VP of Manufacturing Operations to Shift Supervisor. Compensation adjusts accordingly. 40% reduction to match the RO scope. $285,000 down to $114,000 cut just like that. Read off a screen like a weather report." He straightened his tie. Expensive. His haircut was expensive too. Those soft hands never touched a wrench in this building or any other. Kid gave himself the title Chief Operational Efficiency Director, and his mother, Victoria, was board chair. None of this was complicated. Understood. I said 2 words. He glanced up briefly, then back down. Took my calm for surrender. People usually do. "My name is Garrett Stone Morrison. I'm 47 years old. Spent 8 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, Staff Sergeant E6 at discharge, 2 tours. My specialty was heavy equipment operation, structural analysis, and demolition engineering. Army taught me 2 things that stuck. First is how to stay calm when something's about to blow. You don't rush hydraulic pressure. You read the gauges, you count, you breathe. Second is how to read a room that doesn't know the system's already failed. Been at Iron Forge Industries 23 years. Walked through those doors at 24, straight off active duty. Started on the floor operating excavators and bulldozers. Same floor I just got demoted back to. Came here because a buddy said they were hiring, and because heavy machinery made sense to someone who'd spent 8 years understanding what happens to equipment under load. Started as equipment operator running Caterpillars, learning the machines by sound, then by vibration, then by the smell of hydraulic fluid. When seals start wearing, you can tell when a transmission's running hot by the way the torque converter shutters. I felt thousands of them. Equipment operator to floor supervisor in 2 years, floor supervisor to plant manager in 4, plant manager to VP of Manufacturing Operations 11 years ago. Every promotion earned on output, not politics. Every year, same routine. Do the work, skip the meetings, cash the bonus, buy the stock. That last part mattered more than anyone knew. My wife, Lisa Marie Morrison, died 6 years ago. Ovarian cancer, 16 months from diagnosis to the end. She taught high school chemistry for 22 years. Kids remembered her name long after graduation, and she remembered theirs. The church was packed. I wasn't there her final week. Bearing failure in the main excavator line, catastrophic seal rupture in the primary hydraulic system. If that line went down completely, we were looking at $28 million in equipment damage in 2 months lost production. I drove to the plant at 3 a.m. and didn't leave for 5 days. Managed the repair sequence myself. Every hydraulic fitting, every pressure test, every seal replacement. Austin was 16 then. My son, he didn't understand why his dad wasn't there when Mum needed him most. Why the nurses said goodbye without me in the room. He's 22 now, finishing mechanical engineering at Ohio State, calls every Sunday. He's a better man than I probably deserve, and he's never let me forget that week. Not cruel about it, just honest, the way his mother taught him to be. "Dad, I know you saved the company," he told me last Christmas when we were working on his old motorcycle in the garage, "but you weren't there when it mattered most." His hands were steady on the wrench, just like mine taught him. Mom understood, but I didn't. Still don't really. I didn't have an answer then. Still don't. But when that bonus came that quarter, I reinvested it. All of it. 30 cents, 200 shares at employee discount rate. If I couldn't give Lisa more time, maybe I could give Austin something lasting. Let me tell you how a man ends up owning 61% of a $12 billion company without anyone on the board noticing. It starts with understanding that most people don't read the fine print, and the ones who do usually don't care about what happens on the factory floor. Year 1 at Iron Forge, the founder, Harold Gray, walked the floor every Friday. He was 72 then, still sharp, still smelled like diesel fuel and WD-40. He'd stop at every station, ask questions, listen to answers. Actually listen, not perform listening like Preston and his generation do. He stopped at my station in October of my first year, watched me recalibrate a hydraulic system I'd redesigned to reduce fluid waste by 15%. Didn't say anything for a full minute, then reached into his jacket and handed me a wrench, chrome craftsman engraved, said, Iron Forge, Year 1. Own what you build, son. Harold Gray died 7 years later. Heart attack in the same building, actually. Found him in the foundry at 6 a.m. Coffee still warm in his hand. Man worked until the end. I kept the wrench. Did exactly what he told me to do. I'll create part 2 with 1,000 words. Let me output this directly as text. Started with the employee stock purchase plan. Iron Forge offered shares at 15% discount to employees who reinvested bonuses. Most people took cash, bought trucks, paid off cards, took vacations to Florida. I took stock every quarter, every year for 23 years. Half point here, full point there. Adds up when you're patient and nobody's watching the fine print. The guys on the floor thought I was crazy. Garrett, why are you putting money back into this place? Jimmy Kowalski asked me one Friday after we'd finished maintenance on the big Caterpillar. You already work here 50 hours a week. Jimmy ran the crane for 15 years before his back gave out. Good man. Taught me how to read hydraulic pressure like a book. Because I want Austin to have options, I told him. Didn't mention that every share was also a small insurance policy against exactly what Preston just did to me. Jimmy laughed, wiped grease off his hands with a red rag he'd been carrying since the Clinton administration. Your boy's going to be an engineer. Engineers don't need factory stock, but Jimmy didn't understand what I understood from my military days. You don't just build defenses for the war you're fighting. You build them for the war your enemy doesn't know you're prepared for. Then came the private purchases. 3 retiring executives over 12 years each held blocks of Iron Forge shares. First was Eddie Walsh, procurement VP, who retired 16 years ago. Eddie wanted cash for a lake house up in Michigan. I bought his 200 shares at negotiated price, paid $47 per share when market was $52. Eddie was happy, I was patient. Second was Paul Martinez, quality control director, who retired 13 years ago. Paul's wife had cancer, needed treatment money fast. I bought his 900 shares at $63 when market was $68. Paul sent me a Christmas card every year until he died. Said I helped save his wife's life. Third was Steve Butler, outgoing CFO 8 years ago. Steve wanted a clean break, moving to Arizona. Didn't want any ties to Ohio. I bought his 2,100 shares at $89 when market was $94. Steve probably bought a nice golf cart with that money. Every transaction documented, every transfer filed, every disclosure submitted to SEC on time, under Morrison Holdings trust name. The trust was my buddy Hayes Crawford's idea. Hayes and I served together, same unit, both staff surgeons, both combat engineers. He transitioned to law after discharge, specialized in corporate securities at mid-size firm in Cleveland. You need a structure, Hayes told me over beers at Murphy's Tavern down on Market Street. This was 22 years ago, my second year at Iron Forge. Place is still there. Still serves the best fish and chips in Akron. Hayes would drive down from Cleveland once a month. We'd sit in the same booth, talk about everything except the war. What kind of structure? Trust. Morrison Holdings Trust. You're the sole beneficiary, but it's a legal entity. Files its own papers, maintains its own records. More importantly, it's invisible unless someone specifically looks for it. Hayes set up Morrison Holdings Trust that winter, filed the original structure, tracked every acquisition, submitted every SEC Form 4, and Schedule 13D filing. When my ownership crossed 5%, then 10%, then 20%, then 30%. All publicly accessible, sitting in Edgar database, all legal, all invisible to anyone who didn't bother looking. Hayes made sure I understood Article 7 of the Iron Forge Corporate Charter, Emergency Shareholder Governance Clause. He read it to me. Over black coffee in Murphy's back booth 6 years ago, right after Lisa died. This is your insurance policy, Garrett. Hope you never need it. Language was specific. In the event any officer takes unilateral action affecting compensation, title, or duties of any employee holding majority stake without prior written consent of said shareholder, that shareholder may invoke Article 7 to convene emergency board session within 36 hours. Majority stake, I asked Hayes. I'm not there yet. You will be. Question is whether you'll need this before or after you cross 51%. Turned out to be after barely. I hit 51% ownership 18 months ago. Today I own 61% of Iron Forge Industries, market value approximately $732 million. And some 28-year-old with a Wharton MBA, a self-appointed title never ratified by full board resolution, and 18 months of consulting experience just cut my salary by 40% without asking me the board or his mother's legal counsel. You know what the funny thing is? I actually liked Preston when he first showed up. Kid had energy, asked good questions, seemed genuinely interested in learning how things worked. He spent 2 weeks on the floor when he started watching operations, talking to the crew. Guys respected that. Even Jimmy Kowalski said, this one might be different. But that was before Preston figured out he could skip the learning part and jump straight to the fixing part. Before he hired Angela Torres and that whole efficiency consulting team. Before he started seeing the factory floor as a spreadsheet instead of a place where people build things with their hands. Last time anyone on Iron Forge's board reviewed SEC ownership filings was 2015, 9 years ago. By then, I was past 50%. But nobody was paying attention. They were too busy arguing about Preston's hiring, Victoria pushing for her son, 3 directors objecting getting overridden. I didn't slam the conference room door when Preston finished, didn't raise my voice, didn't say a word to anyone on the way out. Walked to the elevator, pressed the button, rode it down alone. Fluorescent lights hummed the same way they'd hummed for 23 years. Concrete smelled like hydraulic fluid in cold air. Walked past Jimmy Kowalski's workstation. He looked up from a bearing he was rebuilding. Saw my face. Oh hell, Garrett. What's they do? Demoted me back to floor supervisor. 40% pay cut. Jimmy set down his wrench. That little I knew this was coming when he started measuring everything twice and understanding nothing once. It's all right, Jimmy. No, it ain't all right.